A warm heater, a comfortable bed, and a short Netflix show before sleep. That's how most of us get through cold winter nights today. But what about our ancestors 20,000 years ago? In regions where temperatures violently dropped to -4 degrees Fahrenheit, how did a species with no thick fur survive the most brutal climate in history? The answer isn't just about luck. It's a masterpiece of prehistoric engineering and biological survival. Let's start with the first survival method, which is surprisingly the most delicate of them all. In 2016, deep in the freezing Altai Mountains of Siberia, inside a remote place known as Denisova Cave, a team of Russian archaeologists, led by Professor Mikhail Shunkov, were digging in silence. They were not expecting anything unusual, but suddenly, something very small appeared in the dirt. A needle. Yes, a needle carved entirely from the bone of a large bird. But this is not just any needle. It is an artifact roughly 50,000 years old, complete with a perfectly carved, microscopic hole for threading. A hole that cannot be accidental. The biggest surprise was not the object itself, but who made it. It wasn't crafted by us. It was found in layers of earth belonging to the Denisovans, a mysterious, extinct branch of humanity. How could a human species living 50,000 years ago, in sub-zero temperatures, engineer such a precise and delicate tool? Because they had to. This tiny piece of bone wasn't just art. It was their ultimate weapon against the Ice Age. Instead of simply wrapping themselves in loose animal hides that let the cold air in, they used this needle to stitch those hides tightly together. They engineered fitted clothing that trapped their body heat. But while the bone needle could trap heat, it couldn't create it. This brings us to the second and most obvious survival method. But for our ancestors, it was their only life support system: fire. In conditions that could freeze human flesh in minutes, an Ice Age hunter needed up to 5,000 calories a day to keep their body functioning. Fire acted as an external stomach. It allowed them to cook tough meat, breaking it down, and unlocking the massive energy their bodies needed to act as walking furnaces against the cold. But the real challenge was keeping the fire alive. There were no lighters, no matches, and no backup plans. Relighting a fire in freezing temperatures took precious energy. That's why preserving glowing embers became a sacred duty, because the moment the flames disappeared, the cold wasn't the only threat. The predators waiting in the dark would instantly close in. That's why we love looking at a campfire or a fireplace today, because for tens of thousands of years, staring into the fire meant you had survived another day. It meant the predators were kept at bay, the cold was defeated, and you were safe. But fire and clothing still weren't enough. What happens when you are in a blizzard and there are no caves? You build one, but there were no trees, just ice and giants. So, early humans became architects. They used the massive bones and tusks of woolly mammoths, interlocking them to build complex, wind-proof shelters. Covered in heavy hides, it was a masterpiece of prehistoric engineering. But inside these bone fortresses, the nights were still brutally cold. Even with a fire, hypothermia was a silent killer. So, they used the ultimate survival heater: each other. They never slept alone. They slept packed tightly together, shoulder to shoulder, sharing body heat to create a human shield against the freezing air. In the Ice Age, isolation was an absolute death sentence. If you were separated from the group, the cold would take you instantly. To survive, you had to be part of the tribe. You had to trust. That desperate need for connection was permanently wired into our brains. That's why loneliness actually physically hurts today. That's why humans are such intensely social creatures. Our love for fire and our deep need for each other are just evolutionary echoes of their survival. And today, we are unimaginably lucky. We flip a switch for light. We turn a dial for heat. Our ordinary winter nights would be their heaven.